How are you? How did your week go? My name is George ACN, one who teaches you life coaching and who also teaches you NeuroLinguistic Programming. I'm delighted to be with you guys today, and I'm sure that you had a fantastic week. Today we're back to class and to move on further from where we left off last week. We'll be learning meta models in NeuroLinguistic. Now, if you have been following carefully, we've talked about multi-model. We said that the multi-model is the reverse of meta model. Now, we said actually that at the beginning of the career of Richard Branson and John Grinder, they put together meta model first. They put together the meta model concept, and eventually they discovered Erickson Milton, who was using a reverse of what they taught, and it was exciting. And we looked at some ideas around multimodal for 2 straight weeks. So today we're going to look at metamodal, what these guys. Now let's take out all of those complications around the subject matter. Let's make it as easy as possible. I'll just tell you this: if you're writing, metamodel is a linguistic technique. It's a linguistic technique. Or you can say that metamodel is a questioning technique. So if you want to think of anything when we talk about metamodels, we're actually challenging ideas. We challenge ideas. We ask a lot of questions. You've got to really appreciate the power of questions. And I'm going to talk about the power of questions and how the questions can help you to become a lot more effective as a speaker and as an NLP practitioner. But let me just quickly dig a little further into metamodel. In my notes, I say here that metamodel seeks to bring clarity and precision in communication. It seeks to bring clarity and then precision in communication. A lot of people even call metamodel the precision model. That actually evolved into the precision model. Sometimes they call it metamodel, other times they call it the precision model. Now, you heard the word generalization, and I'm sure you heard the word deletion. That every time we speak, every time we have a map of the world in our heads, we have a way we see the world. But every time we communicate, we tend to distort some information so that whatever comes out is a distortion. We also tend to generalize stuff. We generalize a whole lot of stuff, okay? And then, most importantly, we delete a lot of information. And so what we're going to look at the differences quickly of between multimodal and metamodal in a short while, but let me just go ahead and talk about a few other things. Now, metamodal in NLP is a set of questions. Again, you see a set of questions designed to specify information and challenge and expand the limits of a person's model of the world. So there are questions. So every time we use questions, multimodal often deals with abstractions, ambiguity, vagueness, storytelling, a language pattern that is sometimes the use of awareness verbs, the use of hypnotic language. That's multimodal, and basically is to go past the conscious mind into the right. But the metamodel wants to get ideas clearly. People don't say how they really feel. People don't express what's really on their mind. And so what metamodel seeks to do is to find out what they really are going through, what they're feeling, or what they really have at the back of their heads. So metamodel responds to distortions, generalizations, and deletions in a speaker's language. This is important. A metamodel is a reverse method or a reverse linguistic pattern of multimodal. So if somebody is telling a story or speaking in vague times, you can challenge his language. You can, if somebody's trying to dupe you or to swindle you of your money, you can challenge his language or challenge his approach by using metamodel, by asking questions. If you want to help people who say they're depressed, don't find out how really depressed are you, you can use metamodels to find out, to dig deeper into specifics of a person. All right, so Grinder and Bandler, people People create a faulty mental map of reality, failing to test the linguistic and cognitive models against the experience of the senses. All right, so we also said last week, and I hope you remember that, we said that language is a translation of mental maps into words. That's what language is. So you have mental maps in your head, then you translate them into words. That's what language is all about. Now, in this translation, there is the unconscious process of deletion. Not everything is taught that is taught is said. There will be assumptions and structural inaccuracies, and in this generalization, a shift towards absolute statements. All right. So now it's important that I went through that before I go on to tell you about the differences, the clear differences between metamodals and multimodals. So let's look at the difference between metamodals and multimodal. All right. So metamodal, what it seeks to do, one difference between the metamodal and multimodal is it seeks to chunk language down to become more specific. Number two, metamodal moves from deep structure to surface, from deep structure down to surface, challenging deletions, distortions, and generalizations. I've said that repeatedly. On the other end, multimodal moves from surface structures to deep, all right, generating deletions, distortions, and generalizations. So whenever you generate deletions, whenever you generate distortions, whenever you model. All right. Another thing that you also understand that is interesting about the metamodal is that it assesses conscious understanding. It's very logical. It wants to get to your understanding. It wants to challenge your thinking. But the other one is not as trying to assess your understanding. It's trying to assess your unconscious understanding. A lot of work is directed towards your subconscious when we use multimodal. In metamodal, we deal with precise understanding. All right. In multimodal, we deal with general stuff. We want to just be abstract. We're not interested in details. We're just looking at things abstractly. So metamodal is a way to question, to spot communication violations. So now let's go into the power of questions. Why it's very important that you ask questions. You see, even for yourself, the difference between where you are right now and where you want to be tomorrow is based on the questions that you ask yourself. If you're working with somebody, the difference between where the person is right now and where the person is going to be tomorrow is largely dependent on the questions they are asking themselves or failing to ask themselves. So questions are very important, and questions are also very powerful. So we have different kinds of questions. We have what we call open-ended questions. When you're having a conversation with anybody and use open-ended questions, these questions are actually designed to get people to open up, to share their intentions, their sentiment, their prejudice. You want to find out their hot button. You want to find out their emotional agenda. You want to find out their cues and their clues. You want to, by asking questions, determine their strategy. But I taught you that last week when we had our last class, class 6 or was it class 5? Now we said that top questions are hard, in order to get people to either say yes, howbeit little to you, and then to keep being in agreement with you. For example, you say that was a very nice meal, wasn't it? Wasn't it? Or isn't it? All right. So now let me just tell you why you need to use precision model. Why you need to use precision model. Now, generalization or multimodal get in the way of effective action because we generalize, because we distort, and because we delete. We don't get to take kind of to use metamodal. You use metamodals to improve sharing mental maps. A lot of us have what ideas and visions and concepts, but again, we don't know how to share those visions, those concepts, those ideas with other people so they can understand and see it. By being abstract, we don't do justice to that. But by being able to clearly spell out our intentions and our initiatives to people, they'll get to see it and they'll get to follow along. So you use precision to improve. Precision models help you to know what people think and know what they think. People think they know what they're saying, but they're saying stuff, but they're deleting, they're generalizing, and they're distorting. You need to act. When we talk about meta models, we're looking at things like universal qualifiers. Universal qualifiers like all, every, never. Someone says that every man cheats. That is a generalization, and that's what we call a universal qualifier. So if anybody says that statement to me, I usually respond back and say, every person? Every person? Are you sure every person? So you are asking that question as a meta model to counter the assertion or the... Okay, so you say the Atlantic slave trade was the most terrible slave trade ever. And your model question is most terrible compared to what? All right. There's another kind of Milton model language pattern. We call it cause effect, so cause and effect. Someone says this kind of statement. They said the teen culture eats more and get fat. The teen culture, that's makes people eat more. Now the emphasis is makes. To that question will be, or to that statement will be, how specifically? How does the teen culture makes eating more, makes people eat more and get fat? All right. Now, so the question you're saying, the question you're using to tackle that statement is the teen culture makes people eat and become fat. Is how do that?